This episode is brought to you by Jane. So Jane is a practice management software and EHR that is built for the real stuff, right? The real things of running a health and wellness practice. And I have a legit question for you guys. Does your day actually end when the last patient leaves? Because if you don't have systems, if you don't have the proper things in place, the answer for most of you listening is probably not. And that's actually something that Jane software can help you guys with. What Jane does is you set a schedule that actually works for you. You can customize and change your different treatment types and your times. And my favorite thing of all, is that you can actually automate the things that are slowing you down, like sending these reminders, gathering intake forms. Jane takes care of all of that before your appointments so that you're not stuck at your office until 9 p.m. trying to get caught up. Did you know it also has an AI scribe for supporting your documentation? So your notes can actually get done real time, because we know that you guys love to do that at the end of a shift, and heck, probably even on Saturday. So if you guys want to see how Jane can support the business side of your practice with these automations and systems built right in, go to jane.app. And if you guys are ready to start working with Jane, don't forget to use our code. That is TWP1MO to get a 1-month grace period on your new account. Welcome to the Wealthy Practitioner Podcast. I'm Dr. Nikki Cottis.
I'm Dr. Alejandro Elias.
And I'm Dr. Gabrielle Manto. Together, we help wellness practitioners build profitable, scalable businesses without sacrificing their health, their families, or their freedom.
On this podcast, we'll talk profit, leadership, and ownership, so your business works for you, not the other way around.
This is the Wealthy Practitioner Podcast.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Wealthy Practitioner Podcast. My name is Nikki Cottis, and I am one of the coaches inside of TWP. Today, I want to talk to you about the Blue Angels. And so I live on the Gulf Coast of Alabama, and the Blue Angels home base is in Pensacola, Florida. And so if you're not super familiar with Alabama geography, like I was not before I moved here, Pensacola and Gulf Shores were neighbors. We can get there pretty quickly. It's about 45 minutes away. And I went to my first Blue Angels show. And at first, when my husband asked me if I wanted to go, I really didn't. I didn't understand the hype. I do know that every year, everyone I know who has a boat goes out on their boat. And it's a pretty big deal. So anyway, we went to Pensacola and we watched it from the beach. And I have to say, I was so impressed that I spent the next few days researching the Blue Angels. And I know that makes me sound like such a dork, but I'm going to share all with you guys the business lessons that are tied into the Blue Angels. And so when you're watching the Blue Angels, if y'all don't know, they're like these fighter pilot jets, just like in Top Gun. I'm sure you guys have at least seen bits and pieces of that with Tom Cruise, but it's those types of fighter pilot jets. And so I wanted to know all about them. And what I first learned is that the Blue Angels were formed right after World War II to help increase morale and boost people's confidence in the military. So I thought that was really cool. Then as I'm watching them, my brain starts going a million miles per minute about their communication. And so I'm watching them. They fly at like 700 miles an hour. They're crisscrossing. They're flying up in the air. They're heading like a jet stream of air behind them at the same exact time. And I'm like, oh, they must just be in constant communication with each other. That is what I thought the business lesson was going to be. That is where I learned I know nothing about flying jets. So they actually barely talk at all, which this makes it to me so much more interesting. And what it all comes down to is the preparation. And the amount of preparation that these pilots are doing is actually incredible. And so first we have to think about, how do you start to trust people to fly as close to 18 inches apart? While they're flying, Blue Angel number one, who's the flight leader, is the only person talking. And he's using very short, rehearsed cue words and distinctive cadence so that he can synchronize the team's movements. He uses a specific tone and timing that tells all of the other pilots exactly when and exactly how to do their maneuver. So, how do they know what to do unless everyone's constantly talking? And so, this is coming down to thousands and thousands of hours about preparation. So, one of the first things that I learned about them is that every January, the Blue Angels pack up and they leave Pensacola, Florida, and they move to El Centro, California. And so when I was reading, I was like, what the heck? Why? So maybe it's because there's like a super awesome military facility there. What it has to do with is the weather. You guys might also know this, but this area of the country, it's rainier than Seattle, Washington. This is the rainiest place in the whole country. Google it, fact check me. You will see that Mobile, Alabama is the most precipitous area in all of the country. So the reason that they leave is because they go to the desert. And that makes it so that every single day is a flyable practice day. If they stayed in Florida, it would be too rainy and they would have too many missed opportunities for practice. So there's very little rain, there's very little wind, and there's very few interruptions. So they move their entire operation process across the country because they don't want inconsistent weather interfering with their practice. And so I think that's literally so fascinating that one of the most elite teams in the world doesn't leave their excellence up to chance. They build and created an environment where excellence has the greatest opportunity to happen. And so during those 2 months, here's what that actually looks like. So when you're watching the Blue Angels show, it's 45 minutes. And that's all we see, right? We see that 45 minutes. That's what I posted on my story. That's what you can watch YouTube videos about. But before the season even starts, they have done 120 practice demonstrations at 45 minutes apiece. That is just actual in-air time before every single show that they're doing. So that is literally just the flying. That's before they have to figure out the debrief and every maneuver, every call, every preparation. That's just flying. So that is pretty crazy. Now, after the show is done, they don't just head to the bar, have a couple beers, say like, great show, guys. We really nailed that one. After each show, they go back to a room and they debrief. They watch every flight. They watch the video, they critique themselves, and they talk about the tiny corrections that they plan to do next time. So just these little tiny changes that they can make to make an incremental difference, because the Blue Angels understand something that I think a lot of us forget sometimes, and it's that excellence isn't lost all at once. It's lost in tiny changes over time. Then I started wondering about the actual people on the team, like how do you become a leader? What are the other people's jobs? What do they do? So there's 6 pilots and they all do something very, very different. Pilot number 1 is the flight leader. So everything starts with them. They set the speed, they set the tone. They are the only ones talking on the radio. Everyone else flies off of them. Then you have number 2 and number 3. They're called the wingmen, and they're not looking out to the horizon. They're almost exclusively, they're only looking at that lead airplane, pilot number 1. They're flying hundreds of miles an hour, making hundreds of tiny corrections, all while they're just keeping their focus on one airplane. That is crazy. Then there's number 4. He's called the slot, and they are directly behind the leader. They say that this is the hardest position because your visual references are completely different. You're literally right behind an airplane. And then there are number 5 and number 6, and they're called the solos. And so these are the crowd favorites because they do have the dramatic crossings. They're the ones who do the vertical climbs. They're the ones who turn on their jet stream at the exact moment. They're the ones who are doing, quote unquote, the tricks. And so their timing has to be exact, because even though they're still part of the same choreography, they're doing something different. And so the reason I'm telling you guys about the 6 different pilots is because nobody is trying to do someone else's job. Every pilot understands exactly what their responsibility is, and they understand what their role is. The team can truly move as one because everyone is excelling at their particular job. So then I was like, well, how do you become a Blue Angel? It's probably really hard, or based on talent. It is actually not just based on talent. Of course, you have to be an excellent pilot, but what the Blue Angels choose their pilots on is culture. They pick their pilots based on who is showing signs of coachability, emotional maturity, who's coachable, who's calm under pressure, who has the ability to accept feedback, and most importantly, trust. One former Blue Angel has said that at the end of the day, you're choosing someone that you will fly inches away from. So skill matters, but trust matters so much more. And so this really got me thinking too, how often do we confuse talent with trust? Because those are not the same things. And so talent gets your attention and trust earns your confidence. That is literally so powerful, right? Talent gets attention, but trust earns confidence. And so as I finished reading about this for literally days, I realized something even more, that the world thinks that the Blue Angels are just a story about talented pilots. But what I know now is that the Blue Angels are a story about standards. The public, we see 6 pilots. They see an entire organization, maintenance, engineers, support, detailed briefings, endless rehearsal, thousands and thousands of hours that no one ever sees. The team experiences literally years for this 45-minute performance so that it can truly look effortless. And so really where all this preparation, guys, is happening is behind the scenes. And so it reminded me that excellence is never built in the spotlight. It's built in the quiet. It's built at 4 a.m. when you're sitting on your computer trying to figure something out. It's built in repetition. It's built in that last 10% of a project that you simply cannot figure out for the life of you. And most importantly, it is built in the standards. And so when people look at your business, they may see the outside facing. It looks effortless. It looks perfect. It looks like you guys aren't even working when patients aren't here. And so I'm just here to remind you guys that it was never effortless, and you know that. And so what people are seeing is your 45-minute public performance. They're not seeing the thousands and thousands of hours that you are putting in to build this business, to build the trust within your team. And that, guys, is truly how building a business is earned. So I hope you guys Google the Blue Angels and you learn a little cool fact about them because they're so cool. I want to go watch Top Gun now. I like the new one, truly. Sorry, Tom Cruise. Well, Tom Cruise is still in it, but I prefer the second one. All right, guys, if you guys are also looking to increase your standards and build a team that is excellent, you guys need to join us in our free masterclass that is coming up at the end of August. And so we will drop details about that very soon, but make sure you're following on Instagram because you need to know all of the details. We are dropping so much cool stuff. We just released our practice scale assessment, which is 90 questions that deep dive into your practice to help give you the biggest bottleneck. I'm going to put the link for that in the show notes. But if you guys are wondering, how do I figure out what my next best move is? This assessment is truly designed for that. And so check it out. You also get 7 days of access to Coach BDQ, which is thousands of hours of TWP and Stephanie's IP all in the back end. So you can talk to her at 2 a.m., 10 p.m., 4 p.m., whenever you have a business question. It is one of the greatest things that we have ever released, honestly. And it's the only way that you can get access to Coach BDQ without being inside of the mastermind. All right, guys, check the link in the show notes for that. And again, be sure that you're following Wealthy Practitioners on Instagram. And we will see you all next week.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Wealthy Practitioner Podcast. If you want to connect with other practitioners just like you, be sure to join our Facebook group at The Wealthy Practitioner and be sure to follow us on Instagram. See you next week.